I think the EU has a lot of unlocked potential, and that gives me a sense of optimism. The necessity of the development of new means and methods of warfare we are facing can accelerate EU's potential on multiple levels. And I think AI is a very good example of the necessity to accelerate.
Welcome to EU Defence Declassified, brought to you by the European Defence Agency. I hope you know by now, but this is our podcast where we delve into the exciting, topical, confusing world of EU defence. I'm Robin Emmott, and alongside me is my colleague, Liisa Janssens, and we've been covering everything from military technology to strategy and some of the developments and data in between.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about something that sounds straight out of science fiction. Imagine detecting a missile before it's even launched. Today we will hear that it's closer to reality than you think.
Yeah, and today we're diving into imaging systems for detecting threats used in modern military operations.
And also now, AI is really changing the picture. We will explore how this tech works and also what it means for defense today. It is my pleasure to introduce Judith Dijk, Project Officer for Optronic Technologies at EDA, and yes, also a recipient of the Women in AI Best Scientist Award. With a background in physics and imaging systems, she works at the intersection of sensors, AI, and defense capability development. A warm welcome to Judith here with us in Brussels.
Hello, it's really nice to be here.
And we're very fortunate to have with us Liisa Janssens of the Technical University Delft. Liisa is an internationally recognized expert in AI and law, and she leads research and strategy on responsible AI use in defense and security. And that's combining scientific disciplines in technology with philosophy and law across academic and other disciplines.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And Liisa, you're one of the authors of the white paper on trustworthy AI, which came out this year, May.
Yes, EDA's white paper, Trustworthiness for AI in Defense, is an example that brings together academia, industry, and experts from EU MODs who worked together on this white paper. This was a really good effort facilitated by EDA, and I'm very honored that the scenario-based approach where my research is upon at the TU Delft is adopted in this paper. And it was very cool to see its development during the discussions and efforts of everyone involved.
All right, then, let's get into it. Judith, tell us about the challenge of detecting threats in military operations, and also how exactly does it relate to detecting missiles before they're even launched?
In military systems, camera systems are often used to detect threats. These are objects in the neighborhood, such as ships, drones, or people. And you also want to know exactly what kind of features they have. For instance, if you see a fisher boat, and it has a ladder on board, it's probably not going to fish, but it's going to enter a ship. Another example is that you want to see if people are just doing their normal life, their normal business, bringing kids to school, or that they point a gun at you. So if you can see that someone points a gun at you, then it definitely is a threat. And this is the same for the missiles. You can point a laser toward a missile, and if the camera system of the missile is pointed towards you, you get the laser back. It's similar to the cat's eye effect. So if a cat looks directly at you, you see the red of his eye. And it's also similar to what used to happen in camera systems, photo systems, when someone took a photo of you and you had this red eye in the flash.
So you're saying in a way that the enemy is giving away their position and you're using their camera to defend yourself in a way.
And you use their camera to detect them. So you see that they're looking at you and you can detect that they're looking at you.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So how much extra time does that actually give you to respond in the case of, say, a missile launch?
For missiles, the extra time is a couple of seconds. But this is a lot of time if you really need to also counter the threat and not also only detect it.
And I also know that AI and special cameras are used in many different new developments. How do these special cameras help detect threats that maybe humans might miss?
Special cameras can detect features that we as humans cannot see. You can, for instance, think about infrared cameras which can detect heat. Humans are normally warmer than their surroundings, and also motors are often warmer than their surroundings, especially when they're used. Other cameras can also be used, such as hyperspectral or multispectral cameras, which will provide the difference between a tree and a camouflage suit. So that's easy to see if someone is hiding in the woods.
So the camera can detect the difference between a tree and a camouflage soldier, say?
Yes, using the different spectral information in there. You can use polarization cameras, which do the same thing, but then with polarization. And there you assume that the normal background, the natural background, only has diffuse reflection, and man-made objects, such as tanks or bombs, have a really clear polarized reflection.
And then when it comes to AI, how is the AI used exactly? And I mean, what you're describing, does it make it more accurate or more faster?
Well, the sensors only provide the data. So here we have a lot of data, but you still have to have the actionable information out of that. And with actionable information, I mean that you want to have the information at the time you need it. So if a missile is launched at you, you don't want to have the information 2 minutes after it hits you. And to get the information out of the data, a lot of AI is used. So in previous times, we used conventional methods. So we modeled what does a ship look like. It's on the water. It has a hull. So some computer scientist made a model, and then you found things in the data. With AI, you can use examples to learn. So you don't say the ship looks like this. You just say, I have hundreds and thousands of ships and it should look like this, and please learn that. And then afterwards I give another image and it says it is ship or no.
And these cameras, where would they be stationed? And where's all this data coming into?
It depends. There are a lot of camera systems in the field. So you have them on vehicles, you have them on persons, you have them on drones, satellites. And one of the challenges is to have the AI and the processing power also really close to all these systems, so that you don't have to communicate all the data to one base station, but only the information.
Mm-hmm. And then on the basis of what you've received, what happens then? Would the commander then launch a preemptive strike or intercept a missile? Or
Yeah, at that point, someone has to interpret if the threat is really there, and then he can counteract it if he wants.
Oh, interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like that's really, really fascinating. Thank you, Judith. You've really shown how AI can make defense systems smarter and also more responsive in practice. But with all these new technologies, I feel like there's a bigger question about how and if we use them responsibly. But now turning to you, Liisa, to talk about the broader issue here, what does responsibility by design mean exactly? And also when it comes to military AI, why is it important from the very start of the development?
Responsibility by design is an effort that takes more than one discipline. And I developed a scenario-based approach to seek for an integrative level of understanding of what is at stake if you talk about responsible deployment of AI in military operations. And by adopting a scenario-based approach, people with a technical background can learn from people who have another background, for example, in law and philosophy. And this approach can guide the responsible deployment of AI in military operations, since working together, in my opinion, is key to success. If you are talking about responsible AI, you need to have an integrative level of understanding.
But that wouldn't be happening at the same time in parallel to what Judith described. What you described, Judith, is really in the heat of the moment, right? Would your work be done ahead of time?
Yes, first of all, you start with a capability gap analysis. So which problem are you solving by implementing an AI application? And which problems do you not solve? And which problems possibly occur when you use something that you cannot test off? So you have an accuracy rate, you need to deal with that. And the insecurity that comes with that, you need to take into account. So if you take a military scenario and the use case as an example, for example, countering unmanned aircraft systems, it's very difficult to determine the scope of the threat, and it's very difficult to counter the threat adequately within a limited time window, for example. So that can be a reason to implement AI, because AI can do the task better than human cognitive capabilities can.
Would that be something that a team or a commander would obviously decide beforehand? I mean, before any kind of threat assessment?
The commander needs to be able to trust the system, and I will say that needs to be justified trust. So it's of utmost importance to identify what type of requirements can enhance the AI system in a way that you can say it's a responsible AI system. And that starts prior to the conceptual phase. And I will say that's the pre-conceptual phase, that you need to ask out the right requirements. For example, a pre-registration of the research design. If it concerns a machine learning application, you need to be able to say, this is a trustworthy machine learning application, and that is not linked to the highness of the accuracy rate, but the accuracy rate needs to be trustworthy. And for example, if probability hacking has been done, you cannot say that it is a trustworthy outcome because the performance metrics is tweaked, and that can have disastrous outcomes during deployments.
But obviously AI is moving very fast, technology moves very fast, and in the military sphere as well. So how do governments and militaries ensure that things are safe and reliable?
If you take a look at the capability gap, where AI can be a solution, possibly cognitive capabilities will not be a solution, because otherwise you need to use cognitive capabilities of a human brain. So if AI can be a solution to a problem that cannot be filled with normal means and methods of warfare, then it can be justifiable and proportional to use something that has more risks attached than we are used to use. And that also brings us to visiting old legal concepts anew, such as responsibility of a commander as an individual, and responsibility of a state to do the right thing. For example, asking out the right requirements during procurement or research and development, for example, to prevent that probability hacking has been done. And you hear a lot about human oversight, and that's very important during military operations. But the question is, can you expect that the commander has oversight on the outcomes of a machine learning application for decision support functionalities, for example? Can he or she have the oversight how the machine learning application comes to the accuracy rate? I don't think so, because otherwise you need to use the commander itself or normal means and methods like calculations that you can test off, that you are sure of.
So, and Judith, what's EDA's role?
Within EDA, we have different CapTechs, capability technology groups that work on different topics. My topic is optronics and AI in there. So we have a lot of governmental experts, people from Ministry of Defense and industry working together on different topics that I mentioned before. So we have some projects on detect before launch. Can we see that someone is aiming at you? We have projects on polarimetric imaging, projects on hyperspectral imaging, and you see that in all these projects also AI is used. So where previously conventional imaging technologies were used, it's all replaced by AI. So to make it short, within EDA, we work on collaborative research with member states on topics like sensors and AI.
Also, to get out of the abstract framework a little bit, maybe there's a real world example that you could bring forward.
And one example that I thought of was the drone attack from Iran on Israel, where you see there are so many targets in the air coming towards you. You cannot follow them all. So you have to have some assistance to find the ones that you want to shoot out of the air, or the ones that you want to counterattack with different means.
And in the Israel-Iran example you were talking about, and there being so many targets.
Too much to handle by one person. But if you are at some point, you have all this data, you cannot watch all the data. You cannot watch all the screens and all the radars and all the sonars. So you have to have something to make some sense out of it. And the interesting part is, how can you do that, but still have the human in or on the loop, or have some human trustworthiness in it?
And that's where AI comes in. And Liisa, you say that, where would your role come in that kind of situation, or your work? Where would that help?
The trustworthiness of AI for me is connected to justified trust. And there a role for government is to play to ensure that the right questions are asked at the right moment in the development process. So if you don't have the knowledge to counterweigh a manufacturer who says it's a trade secret how we developed this model, I cannot give you transparency on how it's developed. That's a signal that you need to raise a red flag, because transparency, not for everyone, of course, but for the procurement lawyers involved procuring new means and methods of warfare, they need to have a transparent idea and ideas how the model is developed. And also asking out the right requirements. And I mean with that, if you say, okay, 85% accuracy rate is responsible AI to us. So we ask out a requirement. We want to have 85% accuracy rate as an outcome of a model. Then we say this is a responsible AI model to use during deployment. I will say to that is an incentive to tweak the performance metrics to that 85%. For me, it's more important that the accuracy rate is trustworthy. That can be 10% or 50%. It's also important to take into account what problem will be solved with the AI model in the kill chain. So sometimes 85% is enough, but maybe 50% is in another case good enough. It totally depends.
You mentioned probability hacking. What is that exactly?
Probability hacking is something that you can tweak the performance metrics and that you have outcomes that look trustworthy and accurate, but they are really not. And it's very difficult to verify and validate if that has or has not happened, because it can even happen in one's brain. A decision made by a mathematician who's making a model, maybe if he or she has the incentive to reach for the 85% accuracy rate because he or she wants to have a promotion, then that can be a decision made by one individual and has enormous impact if that is not discovered, not prevented. It's also very difficult to discover that it has happened, but you can prevent it if you ask full transparency on research designs. It's an analogy with the pharmaceutical industry, who also has the responsibility to be fully transparent on their ideas on a new medicine, fully to have developed a new medicine. So that's the type of responsibility and transparency that I'm interested in.
So we've heard a lot about detecting threats before they happen, how cameras work, and also making sure AI in defense is used responsibly. Before we wrap up, a quick question to both of you. Looking ahead, what gives you the most optimism about the future of AI in defense, technologically or ethically? Judith, let's start with you.
AI is a really disruptive technology. The state-of-the-art is processing so fast. I'm always amazed. When ChatGPT 3 came out, I never imagined that it would change anything. And now I see all my colleagues and all my friends and my children, everyone using it in daily life. And I expect this to happen to all the AI systems, so that the generative AI will really, really make the difference. It has some challenges, so not to have too many biases and to have it trustworthy and all, but I also expect it to make a real big difference. And I'm happy to be working in this wonderful, really fast developing field.
And Liisa, we will give you the final word.
I think the EU has a lot of unlocked potential, and that gives me a sense of optimism. The necessity of the development of new means and methods of warfare we are facing can accelerate EU's potential on multiple levels. And I think AI is a very good example of the necessity to accelerate. But the ways we do things in the EU need to be accelerated as well. Procurement cannot take years. We need to pace up and at the same time preserve. We want to protect with those means and methods of warfare. And I think we need to revisit how the EU wants to protect the norms and values, like the rule of law, that we think that are important in society, since legal questions. And this does not only count for questions on international humanitarian law, like distinction and importance of that, but also for questions on privacy and data protection. If these questions, which are very solid to ask, but if they are asked at the wrong moment, can unnecessarily showstop innovations. And the paradox is that we need those innovations to protect us against adversaries. And this is a new balancing act for the EU.
That's a lot to reflect on, a lot of food for thought. That brings us to the end of this episode, actually. And really, thank you to our guests, Judith.
Thank you.
And thank you, Liisa.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed EU Defense Declassified. For more information on our work, visit EDA's website at eda.europa.eu and check out our magazine, European Defense Matters. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for more episodes.